Now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Catalina Arango. She is the Agile leader here at NextEra Energy and is also the Women in Data Science South Florida co-ambassador. Welcome, Catalina.
Thank you, Dana. I'm so honored to be here this afternoon sharing the stage with so many talented women. I'm also really excited to be speaking to you about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, AI product management. You see, when I started my career in data science, I was fascinated by how machine learning could perform tasks that I previously only thought were possible by humans. I'm still fascinated by that, but what has really surprised me over the years is how important product management principles are to successfully implementing AI solutions and to unlocking the value from AI. You've already seen today how AI is transforming our world. At home, we have smart devices that learn from our preferences and automatically adjust the settings if they sense that we may start feeling uncomfortable. We have our iPhones and cell phones that create these wonderful memories of great moments, and those used to take me hours to create. We have Netflix, which gives us and recommends great content for us, and I even let an algorithm choose my clothes. For those of you that don't know, that's Stitch Fix, and I love the service. These companies have gotten it right with these products. And there's so much more opportunity. A report by PwC estimated that AI could contribute close to $16 trillion to the global economy by 2030. To put this into perspective, that's about 75% of the size of the US economy at the end of this year. That's huge. Yet today, close to 90% of machine learning solutions fail. I hope that by the end of this talk, you'll have some more knowledge under your belt to help shrink this statistic on machine learning failure. So why do machine learning solutions fail? Well, data feeds AI models, so you may be thinking that it has something to do with data. And lack of quality data is a key issue in implementing successful AI solutions. As you can see in this data science hierarchy of needs, the right data and the right infrastructure to support that data storage and the data pipelines is key to being able to implement any value-added data processes like data analytics, data science, and AI. But companies recognize this. And today we have a lot of solutions and service providers out there that are helping organizations build this foundation. So companies think that if they're working on this foundation and they've hired some skilled machine learning engineers, then they're well on their way to unlocking the value of AI and benefiting. The bad news is that this is only half the battle. The good news is that the other half has to do with good design. And I believe that everyone has the ability to learn how to be a great designer and implement machine learning solutions that improve people's lives and delight the users. Stanford, the university that hosts the Global Women in Data Science Conference, has a school called the D School. It's short for the Design School. And they also believe that everyone has the ability to learn how to be creative and to build great products. They came up with this 5-step design thinking framework. The 5 steps are empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And they can be applied to any experience, any solution, any process, or any product. We'll use this framework geared towards AI solutions to help you Develop a framework that you can use in the future to build great AI solutions. The first step is to empathize. So we've heard a lot about empathy today, and I think this is the most important step in the process because it sets the stage for everything to come. You really have to understand who you are building for. In AI solutions, this is really important because you're building something that is going to help augment a human's cognitive abilities or their ability to make decisions. And that's a pretty intimate relationship to have with a computer. So your users have to trust your system. And the only way to build something that your users can trust is to understand who they are, understand their fears, their desires, their needs, and their motivations. So what you can do is just grab a paper and jot down your user's hypothetical name, add a representative photo, and add some details about them. What are their motivations? What are their goals? What's their personality like? What's their day-to-day like? Creating this will really help you understand who your user is and nail the empathize stage. The next step is to define. Here we understand what the goal is, what the problem is, and a very critical question, which we've also heard about today, do we even need AI? Does AI even solve this problem? A good tip is to frame your problem with your user in mind. So here we have just 3 examples of a potential goal. You could maybe help customers find products that they're likely to buy on your site. Maybe you want to proactively notify customers if energy consumption appears abnormally high. That's something that NextEra may know a little bit about. Or maybe you want to help doctors more accurately diagnose a disease, like cancer. Once you've framed your problem, you have to understand whether AI can solve this problem. So, as we learned about earlier as well during the panel, AI is better for some things, and AI may not be the best technology for other things. So if you're looking to personalize an experience at scale, AI is great for that. If you want to predict future events, or recognize the contents of an image with computer vision, or understand some natural language, AI is a great tool. However, if in your solution you need full transparency and you cannot have a black box, AI may not be the best tool. If you need to maintain predictability, it could also be challenging because machine learning and AI are probabilistic in nature, so you can never maintain full predictability. And lastly, if you need to minimize costly errors, you may want to think long and hard about whether AI is the right technology. On this topic of minimizing costly errors, if we think back to the 3 goals that we gave earlier, the cost of incorrectly recommending a product to a customer will never be as high as the cost of making an error when helping a doctor diagnose a disease. The stakes are obviously much higher in the latter. So once you've defined your problem and you've understood whether you can use AI, you can move on to the next stage, ideating. This is the part where we get to brainstorm about what would a possible solution look like. This is where if you have the technical knowledge of machine learning and AI, you will thrive. It's great to have that understanding, to think about what can we implement to solve this problem. So we'll use the example of recommending products to our customers to dig a little bit deeper into this step and really think about those sub-steps. The first thing you need to think about is the data. So for our example, maybe we can use some historical information about our customers and what they've purchased in the past, or maybe what other customers similar to them have purchased. Here, it's really important to understand what biases are in your data. It's not about identifying whether there are biases, because there will always be biases. It's really about understanding what those are and how that will impact the end user. Then you have to think about what algorithms you can use. And obviously here, if you're not skilled at machine learning or data science, you'll need to work with someone who is to understand what algorithm you can apply to solve this problem. The next area, which is really critical here, is thinking about controls. What we mean by controls is really thinking about the level of automation that you want to have in your solution, or how much customization you want to leave up to the end user. So in our example, maybe we can have our customers provide us with some parameters to help the search and the recommendation, or we may decide that we want to just fully automate it and just use their implicit preferences based on the data to recommend them products. The last area we want to think about is trade-offs. So because machine learning is probabilistic and there will be errors, you always have to think about what trade-offs you're willing to make. What's acceptable for your end users? So in the case of recommending products to our customers, we may find that our customers are okay with us presenting something that may not be as relevant just for the sake of having access to more products and maybe finding something that they otherwise wouldn't have seen. However, the case may not be the same in another type of problem. In other types of problems, you cannot sacrifice precision, and false negatives are not okay. So again, it really depends on who your user is and what is your goal and the problem that you're trying to solve. So these concepts can be a little bit technical, but the big takeaway here is that when we brainstorm solutions, we have to think about the technology and how the technology impacts the user. So you always have to think about the probabilistic nature of machine learning and how that will play out differently than a traditional software system. Once you've come up with a solution that you think you can implement, you can move on to the next stage, which is prototyping. So when you're prototyping, you really have to think about how you can create a simplified version of your solution to get it in front of your users. So for AI systems specifically, it's not just about creating a UI and kind of designing the user experience. You have to do that, but you also have to understand the model that you're building and what the result of that model will be once it's implemented. So one way you can prototype a machine learning model is maybe using a subset of features or a subset of data, or even using a simplified version. But the key here is that you need to give something to your end user so that they can get a sense for what that algorithm will look like in a production setting when they're actually interacting with it in the real world. So what you can do is put the inputs and outputs into a dashboarding tool and give the end users or the subject matter experts the ability to play around with the inputs and see how the results of the model change. This will give them a good sense of what that ultimate solution will look like and help to build trust. And again, trust is key when you're building AI solutions. So once you've prototyped, you can then move on to the testing phase. And testing is all about getting your product, your prototype in front of the users and getting their feedback. So to summarize, the 5-step design thinking framework is to empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. This framework is iterative in nature, and so is the machine learning development process. So, naturally, iteration is also critical in AI product design. The big takeaway here is that design is key to successful AI solutions. And what I love about this relationship between design and AI is that it's really a virtuous cycle. As you can see in this illustration, if you build a great product, you're going to attract users. Those users will generate data, and that data will feed your AI model, which will in turn improve the model and improve the product and the user experience. This is why it is key. Before building anything, you need to empathize with your users, and you need to understand who they are and follow this 5-step design thinking framework. At the end of the day, just remember that someone will use your product, so design for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Catalina.